The U.S. national debt, a figure that seems to climb higher every year, casts a long shadow over our nation's economy. It impacts everything from interest rates to government spending, and its effects trickle down to every American. But what many people don't realize is that this debt crisis isn't just a federal issue. Individual states are grappling with their own mountains of debt, some teetering on the brink of financial disaster. In this video, we're diving deep into the heart of America's state debt crisis. We'll be shining a spotlight on the top 10 most indebted states in 2024, dissecting the reasons behind their financial woes, and exploring the potential consequences for their residents. From the sunny shores of California to the bustling streets of New York, we'll uncover the hidden costs of government spending and the tough choices states face in the years ahead. Get ready for a wild ride through the world of budgets, bonds, and ballooning deficits. It's time to face the music, America. We're in deep, and the bill is coming due. California, land of Hollywood dreams, Silicon Valley innovation, and a staggering $1 trillion in debt. That's right, folks. The Golden State has officially crossed the trillion-dollar threshold, a dubious distinction that puts it in a league of its own. Now, before we start throwing avocados at each other, let's break down exactly what makes up this colossal debt. California's debt can be broadly categorized into three main areas: retirement liabilities, budgetary borrowing, and bond debt. The state's generous pension system, while admirable in its intent, has created a massive unfunded liability, meaning there's simply not enough money to cover the promised retirement benefits for state employees. Add to that years of budgetary shortfalls, where the state has spent more than it's taken in, and you have a recipe for fiscal disaster. And let's not forget those bonds, those lovely IOUs that California has been issuing to finance everything from infrastructure projects to schools. While bonds can be a useful tool for funding essential services, over-reliance on them can lead to a dangerous cycle of debt accumulation. California's love affair with bonds has come at a cost, and now the state is facing a mountain of debt that threatens to overshadow its economic prosperity. New York, the city that never sleeps, is also a state that never seems to stop spending. And that spending has come at a price, leaving the Empire State with a hefty debt burden. From the soaring skyscrapers of Manhattan to the rolling hills of upstate, New York faces a trifecta of financial challenges: pensions, healthcare, and infrastructure. Let's start with those pesky pensions. Like California, New York has a generous pension system for its state employees, but the cost of those promises has ballooned in recent years, creating a significant strain on the state budget. Then there's healthcare, a perennial challenge for any state, but particularly acute in New York, with its large and diverse population. Providing affordable healthcare while managing rising costs is a delicate balancing act, and one that New York has struggled to master. And let's not forget about infrastructure. New York's aging roads, bridges, and public transit systems are in dire need of repair and modernization. But those upgrades don't come cheap. The state has poured billions into infrastructure projects, but the needs continue to outpace the funding, leaving New York with a growing backlog of repairs and a hefty debt to show for it. Illinois, the land of Lincoln, is also a land of staggering debt. The state's financial woes have been making headlines for years, and for good reason. Illinois has been grappling with a perfect storm of fiscal challenges, from dwindling revenues to ballooning pension liabilities. But what exactly has led the Prairie State to this precarious position? One word: pensions. Illinois' pension system is among the most underfunded in the nation, a ticking time bomb that threatens to consume the state's budget. Years of underfunding, coupled with generous benefit promises, have created a massive liability that Illinois is struggling to contain. The state has made some efforts to reform its pension system, but those efforts have been met with fierce resistance, leaving Illinois in a fiscal quagmire. But pensions aren't the only culprit. Illinois has also been plagued by persistent budget deficits, meaning the state consistently spends more than it takes in. This chronic overspending has forced Illinois to rely heavily on borrowing, further exacerbating its debt problem. The combination of pension woes and budgetary mismanagement has left Illinois in a dire financial strait, with no easy solutions in sight. New Jersey, the Garden State, is known for its beautiful beaches, bustling cities, and a rather prickly debt problem. The state's finances have been a source of concern for years, with unfunded pension and benefit obligations casting a long shadow over its budget. New Jersey's generous pension system, while well-intentioned, has created a massive financial burden, leaving the state scrambling to meet its obligations. The problem lies in the gap between the promises made to state employees and the funds available to pay for those promises. Years of underfunding, coupled with generous benefit structures, have created a significant unfunded liability, meaning there's simply not enough money in the pension fund to cover the benefits promised to retirees. This ticking time bomb threatens to consume a larger and larger portion of the state budget, leaving less money available for essential services like education and infrastructure. And it's not just pensions that are weighing down New Jersey's finances. The state also faces significant healthcare costs, particularly for its large population of retirees. Providing quality healthcare while managing costs is a delicate balancing act, and one that New Jersey has struggled to master. The combination of pension woes and rising healthcare costs has put a significant strain on the state's budget, leaving New Jersey facing some tough choices in the years ahead. Florida, the Sunshine State, is a magnet for tourists and retirees alike, drawn by its warm climate, beautiful beaches, and relatively low taxes. But beneath the surface of this sunny paradise lies a more complex financial picture. Florida, despite its reputation for fiscal conservatism, is grappling with a growing debt burden, fueled by a booming population and the need for costly infrastructure upgrades. Florida's population has exploded in recent years, putting a strain on the state's resources and infrastructure. More people means more demand for schools, roads, and public services, all of which require significant investment. Florida has managed to avoid the massive pension liabilities that plague states like California and Illinois, but the state's rapid growth has created its own set of financial challenges. And then there's the issue of climate change. Florida is on the front lines of rising sea levels and increasingly severe weather events, which threaten to wreak havoc on the state's infrastructure and economy. The cost of adapting to these challenges, from building seawalls to upgrading drainage systems, is substantial, adding further pressure to Florida's already strained finances. So while Florida may enjoy the sunshine, its financial future is far from clear. Texas, the Lone Star State, is known for its outsized personality, booming economy, and yes, its massive debt. While Texas enjoys a reputation for fiscal conservatism, the reality is that the state has racked up a significant debt burden, fueled by its rapid population growth and ambitious investments in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Texas's population has been growing at a breakneck pace, putting pressure on the state to expand its infrastructure and services. Building new schools, roads, and hospitals is no small feat, and Texas has relied heavily on borrowing to finance these projects. The state's debt has also been fueled by its commitment to education, healthcare, and other essential services, areas where Texas has consistently invested heavily. But while Texas's debt may be large, it's important to note that the state's economy is also robust. Texas boasts a diverse economy, a business-friendly environment, and a strong job market, all of which contribute to its ability to service its debt. However, the state's reliance on borrowing to fund its growth raises questions about its long-term fiscal sustainability. Can Texas continue to borrow its way to prosperity, or will its debt eventually catch up with it? Massachusetts, the Bay State, is renowned for its world-class universities, thriving tech sector, and a rather hefty debt burden. While Massachusetts boasts a strong economy and high levels of education, the state is grappling with a significant debt load, driven primarily by its investments in infrastructure and pensions. Massachusetts's aging infrastructure, from its roads and bridges to its public transit systems, requires significant investment to maintain and modernize. The state has poured billions into infrastructure projects, but the needs continue to outpace the funding, leading to a growing backlog of repairs and a mounting debt burden. And then there's the issue of pensions. Massachusetts, like many other states, faces a significant unfunded pension liability, meaning there's simply not enough money in the pension fund to cover the benefits promised to retirees. This pension shortfall has put a strain on the state budget, forcing Massachusetts to make difficult choices about how to allocate its resources. The state has made some efforts to reform its pension system, but those efforts have been met with resistance, leaving Massachusetts facing a difficult balancing act between meeting its pension obligations and investing in other essential services. So while Massachusetts may be a beacon of innovation and progress, its debt burden casts a shadow over its future. Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, is a state of contrasts. It's a state with a rich history, a diverse economy, and a proud tradition of public service. But it's also a state grappling with a significant debt burden, fueled by its investments in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Pennsylvania's commitment to these essential services is admirable, but it has come at a cost, leaving the state with a hefty debt load. Pennsylvania's spending on education, from K-12 schools to higher education, is among the highest in the nation. The state is home to a vast network of public schools and universities, all of which require significant funding to operate. And then there's healthcare, a perennial challenge for any state, but particularly acute in Pennsylvania, with its large aging population. Providing quality healthcare while managing costs is a delicate balancing act, and one that Pennsylvania has struggled to master. And let's not forget about infrastructure. Pennsylvania's aging roads, bridges, and public transit systems are in dire need of repair and modernization, but those upgrades don't come cheap. The state has poured billions into infrastructure projects, but the needs continue to outpace the funding, leaving Pennsylvania with a growing backlog of repairs and a hefty debt to show for it. Michigan, the Wolverine State, is a state of resilience. It's a state that has weathered economic storms, embraced innovation, and fought for its place in the global economy. But Michigan is also a state grappling with a significant debt burden, a legacy of its efforts to revitalize its economy and invest in its future. Michigan's debt is a reflection of its commitment to infrastructure, education, and economic development. But it also raises questions about the state's long-term fiscal sustainability. Michigan's debt is largely driven by its investments in infrastructure, particularly its transportation network. The state has poured billions into repairing its roads and bridges, upgrading its public transit systems, and expanding its airports. These investments are essential for Michigan's economic competitiveness, but they have come at a cost, adding to the state's debt burden. Michigan has also invested heavily in education, from early childhood programs to higher education, recognizing that a skilled workforce is essential for economic growth. And then there's the issue of economic development. Michigan has been proactive in attracting new businesses and industries to the state, offering tax incentives and other forms of support. These efforts have helped to diversify Michigan's economy and create jobs, but they have also contributed to the state's debt load. So while Michigan's debt is a reflection of its commitment to a brighter future, it also represents a challenge that the state must address. Ohio, the Buckeye State, is a microcosm of America. It's a state with a diverse economy, a mix of urban and rural communities, and a proud tradition of civic engagement. But Ohio is also a state grappling with a significant debt burden, a reflection of its investments in education, healthcare, and public services. Ohio's debt is a reminder that even in a state known for its fiscal prudence, the cost of providing essential services can add up. Ohio's debt is largely driven by its commitment to education, from early childhood programs to higher education. The state has invested heavily in its public schools and universities, recognizing that education is the key to a brighter future. Ohio has also made significant investments in healthcare, particularly for its aging population. Providing quality healthcare while managing costs is a challenge for any state, but Ohio has made it a priority. And then there's the issue of public services. Ohio provides a wide range of services to its residents, from public safety to environmental protection. These services are essential for the well-being of Ohioans, but they come at a cost, contributing to the state's debt burden. So while Ohio's debt is a reflection of its commitment to its residents, it also represents a challenge that the state must address. From coast to coast, America's states are facing a debt reckoning. We've seen how unfunded pensions, ballooning healthcare costs, and crumbling infrastructure have pushed states like California, New York, and Illinois to the brink. But the problem extends far beyond these headline-grabbing examples. Across the nation, states are grappling with the consequences of decades of overspending and underfunding, and the bill is coming due. The long-term effects of these debts on state economies and residents are nothing short of alarming. As debt payments consume a larger portion of state budgets, essential services like education, healthcare, and infrastructure will inevitably suffer. Taxpayers will be squeezed as states scramble to raise revenue, and economic growth could be stifled as businesses face higher costs and uncertainty. The consequences of inaction are dire, and the time for tough choices is now. We can't afford to ignore this crisis any longer. It's time for a national conversation about responsible spending, sustainable budgets, and the need for long-term planning. The future of our states, and indeed our nation, depends on it.